is making a comeback.
The Democratic establishment pulled off a political feat of epic proportions in bringing back Joe Biden from the dead. And they needed nothing less after a strong early showing by Senator Bernie Sanders. This was a turnaround, really, as shocking as the chattering class are wont to say. Or was it entirely expected, even planned? But what if the Democrats rocked by putting their eggs in the Biden basket? And does this signal the death of democratic socialism, at least for the time being?
Joining me now is Washington political columnist Tim Donner. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Lise. Good to be here.
Political correspondent Graham J. Noble. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Lisa.
And political columnist Joe Schaefer. Welcome to Truth TV, Joe.
Hello, Lisa.
All right, Joe, let's just start off with you. Can we appropriately label Joe Biden the comeback kid?
Well, we can. While we're at it, let's go ahead and label as great comebacks the Bushes, the Clintons, Al Gore, John Kerry, Mitt Romney, the whole kit and caboodle. What the Democratic establishment has pulled off here is getting their base of voters to support en masse one of the most awful candidates that has run in recent memory, gaffe-prone, aged, making mistakes. They've scared them with the Trump bogeyman, and they've said that Bernie Sanders can't defeat the Trump monster. You have to support this candidate that otherwise would not have been supported. So hats off to the Democratic establishment. They've brought back a style of politics we all thought had been thoroughly discredited.
Sounds like you're a true Biden fan. Well, Tim, what does all this mean for Senator Bernie Sanders and his fellow Democratic socialists, or we should call them maybe the Demsos?
Well, I think if I was a Democratic voter right now, what I'd be particularly scared of, even more than Joe Biden's cognitive dysfunction, is the fact that there's no remaining safety net. All the other so-called moderate candidates who are not really moderate, but are compared to Bernie, they've all been run off by the Democratic establishment, by the elite, by the Democratic National Committee. So there is no safety net left for the Democratic Party. And now they're going to go through 8 months of Joe Biden trying not to stumble, not to make mistakes, not to show his age, not to look senile. And they say that Bernie Sanders was an impossible bet to beat Trump. But at least Bernie Sanders can put a couple of sentences together. He's coherent, he can fight, he can talk. Joe Biden, on the other hand, maybe he's even more of a risk, given all of his deficits, than Bernie Sanders is.
All right, Graham, now we've got two that are kind of down on poor Joe. Dispassionately, what does Biden bring to the table for the Dems?
Well, of course, he brings a few things. First of all, he brings what is left of the so-called Obama coalition. Most importantly, the all-important black vote. He brings the experience of having been vice president. And he brings, of course, a level of relative moderation, because as has already been said, anybody compared to Bernie Sanders is moderate. And so Biden is proposing policies that, unlike his rival, do not scare the pants off of probably about 50% of likely Democratic voters. And of course, last but not least, he brings to the table the fact that he is not Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Tim, do you think this was really a shocking development, or did the DNC have this all figured out in advance? I mean, if you listen to the shows, they kept saying, shocking, Biden won, shocking. I did not find this shocking. Did you?
Well, I think what makes it shocking is the fact that a party that was unable to even count votes in the first contest of their presidential nominating process was later able to consolidate this conspiracy to run off everybody else and hand the nomination to Joe Biden. So they were very successful at doing it. Am I shocked? I'm shocked that they were that effective, to be honest with you, because they showed a remarkable degree of ineffectiveness before that. But they scared the daylights out of everybody, probably told Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg that, you've got very, very nice careers ahead of you. It'd be a shame if anything happened to you. And
Huh?
and
Well,
and they basically ran them off with the threat that, if you want us to support you in the future, you'll support our guy, Joe Biden, this time.
yeah, Joe, as mentioned before, Biden is showing some serious cognitive decline. Yelling at voters, referring to AR-14 when it's AR-15. Are these simple gaffes, or is there something more neurologically sinister lurking? As you see it, just the common man, not speaking as a neurologist, which I know you are not.
Well, yeah, I think that's the interesting perspective here, is how is the average person going to respond to this? He definitely shows cognitive decline on just a casual look at him. You can't go more than a couple of days without one of these moments. In the rage moment, they're as scary as the lapses of memory. When he's yelling at a guy in a hard hat construction worker, that's about the worst optics you can ask for. And he looks like, he looks terrible doing it. His aides are trying to stop him. He's shushing them. If you're an average person watching this, you're saying, this guy has some problems, and I don't see how I can vote for him in November. It is a serious issue for the Democrats, and they're going to try sweep it under the rug, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
On one level, it's quite pitiful to watch, really. But Tim, let me ask you this: what we're looking at is two old white guys. What happened to the women? What do you make of the Dems ignoring Tulsi Gabbard as if she was an apparition?
Well, I think the thing about Tulsi Gabbard is, on the one hand, she's received so few votes and one delegate that having her in the debate doesn't seem like she's on the same level with these other two guys. But what's disturbing is that they treat her as a non-person, as if she doesn't exist. They talk about all the women that run in the Democratic Party. They talk about Klobuchar and Warren and all the rest. And they act as if Tulsi Gabbard doesn't exist, even though she holds the single position that used to define the Democratic Party, which was no foreign entanglements, don't get involved in foreign wars, withdraw us from all these conflicts in the Middle East. That used to be the Democratic position. Now it's Tulsi Gabbard's position, and she's been marginalized and sent out to pasture by the Democratic Party. They just don't want that element of foreign policy to even enter into their debates.
Yeah. Well, now, drum roll, please. We start a new segment of our panel discussion: bravos and boos. Who or what gets your bravo or boo for the week? Let's start with you, our LN chief political correspondent and satirist, Graham Noble. Graham.
Well, I think I would give the boo to Bernie Sanders, to be honest, for not doing what he should have done today for the good of the party, which is to withdraw from the race. I don't think he has, to use a well-worn term, he has no path to 1,991 delegates, and I think he's just damaging. He's damaging the party's prospects the longer he stays in, I think, because of his angry and somewhat abusive supporters who don't actually go to the polls to vote for him. So he's really just not doing anyone any favors. In terms of a bravo, I will give actually a bravo to Tulsi Gabbard for still remaining in the race. Despite, as Tim correctly pointed out, she's been completely marginalized, completely ignored, and I don't know. Obviously, she has no chance whatsoever, but I just kind of like the fact that she refuses to withdraw from this race. I think she's trying to make a point.
Well, I was going to give you each one to pick a bravo or a boo, but you fulfilled the whole thing there. So, Joe, what do you got? A bravo or a boo or both?
Well, I'm glad it's only one, because I have no bravos. I think it's just been a disaster what we've seen the last couple of weeks if you're thinking about what's good for the country. My boo is to Bernie Sanders as well, but for a different reason. It's, how could you not defeat Joe Biden? You're running as a populist outsider. You know the establishment is coming after you. It shouldn't have taken him by surprise like this. Biden's a terrible candidate. You've had 4 years to prepare your movement for this, and you got rolled by, I really compare him to Jeb Bush in 2016. That is how bad a candidate I think Joe Biden is. And it's like Donald Trump being rolled by Jeb Bush, as improbable as that sounds. That's what happened to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders ran a horrible campaign, and his movement evaporated overnight as soon as Joe Biden won one primary and the establishment pushed him a little bit. So to me, Bernie just came up so small, and that is really, really surprising to me.
Okay, Tim, what do you got?
Well, I'm going to pick Bernie Sanders too, but I'm going to shock you by giving him a bravo. And here's why. There's this perception building that Bernie didn't really want the nomination. He doesn't really want to be president. He wants to make a lot of noise. He wants to move the party in the socialist direction, but he doesn't, when it comes right down to it, he won't do what it takes to actually win. Well, I'm giving him a bravo because I think he has won in a way. He has taken the agenda of the Democratic Party and moved it so far to the left that Joe Biden, the apparent nominee, is going to be adopting a lot of his positions on climate change and health insurance, not specifically health insurance, but a lot of the things that Bernie Sanders is being attacked for as socialist are things that Joe Biden already adopted in the course of his campaign and that the Democratic Party now owns. So Bernie Sanders may not win the nomination. Yeah, he'll lose the nomination, but he has won an important battle because he has moved his party successfully far to the left.
And I'm going to end with a bravo to the Democratic Party establishment. They managed to get the socialists out of the race, but of course the downside to that is now they have to dance with Joe Biden henceforth. So that's our panel for this week. For Joe, Tim, and Graham, I'm Lisa K. Donner. Thanks so much for joining us. And remember to surf on over to Liberty Nation early and often, where truth is making a comeback.
Truth is making a comeback.